several guys have mentioned the Internet of Things. I've heard it several times. Explain that to me.
Fancy name to sell more stuff.
Yeah,
The Internet of Things is whatever you want it to be.
It's like
yeah,
a
it's
cloud.
like hooking your refrigerator to the internet. You know, or your
Okay.
train set, or your train set, or
So-
hooking things,
Okay.
hooking
Anything.
Yeah,
little
you have to
itsy
hook it up to
bitsy
the
things
internet,
to your
the
internet,
thing.
into the
Everything-
internet.
Okay. That's
My
it. Thank
door
you.
lock gets interneted. His robot gets interneted.
I have a fermentation, I hesitate to call it a chamber, but it's a cooler with some Christmas tree lights in it that I'm using for fermentation. And I can go into UbiDots and make sure that it's keeping at a constant temperature for monitoring purposes. And if it goes out of range, it will send me an email. So for stuff like that, it works pretty well.
Chuck's trail counter.
Yeah.
Interneting things.
Okay.
Something you can check and see is, did I really close the garage door at the house this morning? Yes, the garage door is closed.
Okay.
And there's a burglar in the house.
Bad guys can hack my cat feeder. My cat can be overweight.
Yes, the garage door closed right after the burglar got in.
Speaking of interneting things, I don't know, everybody else is probably plugged into Kickstarter and knows everything that happens as soon as it happens, but the people who did the Spark core have got a Spark Photon, which is a cheaper version of the Spark core, and right now on Kickstarter is the Spark Photon, which does 3G, 2G, cellular interneting things. So it's I think it's about $35, $50 in that neighborhood for the early versions. It's already in the first hour it had funded, and a lot of the early things are already gone. In the time that it took me to figure out whether I wanted 2G or 3G, the early ones were gone.
But you still need a
subscription.
subscription somewhere to
Yeah.
connect to. the-
No, the cool thing about this one is, I take that back. Yes, but the Spark has decided to become, and there's a 15-letter abbreviation for it or whatever. They are a reseller of SIM cards now, and they are going to provide you with a SIM card that will run on their machine. Now, you can use your SIM card from whatever service you have,
Okay.
but it will come with a SIM card for, I forget what it is, $2 or $3 a month, and limited bandwidth. It will not accept text messages. It will not accept phone calls, but there's some question as to whether it will know that something has been called to it or not. But it can definitely send data on the 2G, 3G systems.
So Pete brings up a good point about IPv6. Because one of the problems with the V4 is that everything's behind a NAT, and or at the very least a dynamic IP address, and so having something that's an Internet of Things that's addressable is a challenge for IPv4 stuff that I've personally run into, and so.
And when you're talking cellular, that a lot of the carriers have also sunsetted 2G.
Right.
Yeah, and that was the thing, is that over in Europe, they're still going to carry 2G for a while longer. They were upfront about it. They didn't do it as soon as they released they started the Kickstarter, but they did allude to the fact that 2G versus 3G was a decision you wanted to make. And then an hour into it, while I was still trying to figure out how to make that decision, the fact got shown up that United States carriers are planning on sunsetting 2G, I believe it was by it's either 16 or 2018. So
AT&T
that-
is 2016.
Okay.
End of 2016.
Okay.
Well, I
You gotta go 3G.
So yeah,
the
basically,
T-Mobile even announced it.
yeah. Basically, what I took from it was that if you're in the United States, you want to go for the 3G. but, you know, it depends on what your lifespan for your product is.
So the question that you just raised now has got more to me. If I want to do Internet of Things, and I want to set up something back at the museum, if I want to do it via a laptop, I don't have to worry about whether it's IVP 4 or 6, right?
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's more complicated than that. All your stuff has, if you want IPv6, everything has to have an IPv6 stack built into it, and a lot of things don't.
Okay,
especially-
why would I want-
Let's stick to IPv4 for the time being.
Yeah.
Okay,
So what would be involved with him? You're creating a, what's called a pinhole out into the internet and basically exposing a port that's something out on the internet, well, actually.
Not
right.
necessarily.
No, not necessarily.
So a Raspberry
It's
Pi can be
complicated.
put on the
It's
internet.
damn
okay,
complicated.
I'm already able to go from my house to remote desktop, my Linux machine, remote desktop, into a Windows machine to check our HVAC system.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
You're
So you're
rolling your
already on
own
top of it.
Internet of Things.
All right,
You're already doing it.
I want to put up a Pi now. We want to put up a camera on one of the animals. Now, and it's not going to be on your phone. That would have to be 6, right?
If it's a Pi, it's
No.
just another computer. You just.
No,
it's just-
IPv6 and IPv4 mutually exclusive.
Okay.
You can have them both at the same time, or or only one or the other. IPv6 is not officially used as the primary internet protocol yet.
Okay, so at this point, I'm not even going to worry about that.
Don't even worry about IPv6.
All I want,
Don't worry
I just need to set up essentially a VPN back to my Pi.
Well, you don't really need a VPN. If you have, what you do is is this like, you're doing like a web-based thing?
Yeah, we
Okay.
want to be able to
So
go to our website and say,
you
let's
can
you
set
look
up
at
your
the
server
chinchilla.
on your Pi to work at a very high port, let's say 32,000 or something, all
Uh-huh.
right? And as long as you have nothing in the Pi that could be damaged, okay, and they're only going to be reading stuff from the Pi, and you have no way to do post, then you can just keep it open.
Okay,
Okay, you don't have to have any fancy logins or anything else.
So you'd be broadcasting into the world.
Right, you'd be broadcasting it to the world, but if it's only a reading interface, that's fine.
Yeah. You can do that with a program called Motion in no time flat. You can basically cause Motion, a program called Motion, to take your webcam image and push it, or make it available on a port. Now, but then that has to get through your,
Routers and firewalls.
well, that's my,
Routers,
that's my
firewall.
next thing. I've got to get my, my router to say, to open the port up for it,
For the IP address that the
Pi
the
has.
Pi has.
Is fixed.
So most routers these days will allow you to lock in the IP address based on the
MAC address.
the Ethernet, yeah,
Yeah.
the MAC address.
I've got the DD-WRT software on my
Right.
router.
That way, what happens is, every time that device comes up, it always has the exact same IP address. Once you know that, you can get to it from anywhere.
But it's a problem on mobile, when you're on 2G, where your IP is, you know,
Yeah,
how
you
do
have no
contact
control
the
over it.
device
Yeah.
that you don't know it's IP? I mean, you have to.
Right, so
have to use the
for something like that, you have to
server.
Yeah.
post it to UBDOTS or
Right, you have to have
Xively
the
or-
device initiate the
Phone.
handshake and say, hey, this is where I am.
Right, and I think the Spark Photon, I believe they were using more of a phone number interface rather than an IP interface.
Right, and that's, when you
Right.
said the SMS, that's one of the ways you can, like, this is actually the way I've done it, where there's an SMS, so the server can go out and say, I don't know anything about you, but I know your phone number.
Well, there
So-
are ways to find out what the IP address is. It's a little roundabout, but there are ways to do it.
I would give on
I know what the IP address is of every piece of equipment that runs in my house, and it's like
But
10
he's
or
saying
15.
someone
Cell
takes
phone?
it somewhere else and plugs it in.
Your cell phone IP address?
Not right this second.
Yeah, what he's saying is
That's the trick.
the IP address of a device that you don't have physical access to. Someone takes one of your devices, plugs it up on another network on the other side of the world. How do you remote into it? when you don't have it?
That you can't do. That's not easy.
Pete, is this motion software? This is a software?
Yes.
Pete?
Yeah, I'm playing with it right this moment.
Okay.
And
Please don't tell me it only runs on Windows or something
No,
like
it runs
that.
on the
No,
Pi.
It's a Pi
you install
software.
it as a package.
Oh, okay.
It's apt-get motion. Sudo
Yeah,
apt-get
apt.
motion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Now, on that question, can the Raspberry Pi connect to any of our existing SLRs, digital SLRs, like Canon or Nikon?
Raspberry Pi runs Debian Linux. It runs a very rich subset of darn near anything running on version 7 Debian Linux, aka Easy.
D was very well
So-
Raspberry Pi.
So if any computer can talk to it, then a Raspberry Pi can talk to it.
Theoretically, can.
But-
You just gotta have the driver
But
right.
Just that.
The quick answer, I mean, the catch is if the Canon requires a USB driver
Right.
that's highly proprietary, that require, somebody had to reverse engineer it and kill themselves to figure out, and it's got some kind of dependency that makes it
I believe so.
not portable on ARM, then you can't get there from here, but
But there's actually a package called G-Photo DMS, I'm sorry, earlier that has a lot of,
a lot of cameras just work.
Just okay.
Doesn't the guy who writes a lot of the Linux webcam drivers, and he gave us talk here, right? Isn't that,
Data acquisition.
was that acquisition?
Yeah.
yeah, that's Warren Jasper. on that.
He's over textiles on Centennial campus.
Right. Yeah, his day job, he's a textile professor.
So it probably either just works or it's really difficult and you're not gonna be able to get it to work.
Depending on the interface that you want to get to your DSLR,
Okay.
you might want to look into OpenWRT. It's
Open word.
it's for Wi-Fi routers. This is a little Wi-Fi hub, and the intertubes have gotten together and figured out the software, and you can reprogram the hardware on, or the firmware on this thing.
Okay.
And this particular one is used by a lot of photographers as a remote shutter release on their DSLRs
Okay.
with this OpenWRT.
And there's also DDWRT, right?
I haven't come across that one, but.
Yeah,
take the
yeah,
word
that
for
was
it.
actually the more famous one, but they've now gone commercial, and their best software you have to buy now.
Yeah, I'm using DDWRT.
Did you work?
I'm the most reliable router ever made on the planet.
An old Linux.
WRT 54G, early one.
Yeah, I have some old
I
ones
think
too.
it will probably outlive me.
Yeah, but they're slow. If you put them on a real fast line, they won't keep up at the speed.
AT&T doesn't give me that problem.
My in-laws let the cable guy.
Yeah,
take
I had
mine.
to
When they got
actually
the
get rid of it. I didn't get rid of it, I just,
The only one I've ever had that was just as reliable as an animal.
I just got a new
What-
Asus.
what model number do you
top of the
like?
line.
It's long, it's been,
There's a new version of it you gotta watch out for if you search for it.
Oh, hell yes.
They've revved it and
all of the newer versions of the WRT 54G were a disaster. They just made it worse and worse and worse.
I've either got, I
So
know I've
it was
got
owned by
one, I
Cisco
might
for a
even have
while,
two of
and
those
they
sitting
sold
back in the
it.
museum. I probably
it was
pull
on
them off
before
the shelf,
Cisco,
huh?
then Cisco bought it and kept it a while, then they sold it.
Yeah,
I'll buy them unreasonable.
yeah, the one, I've got two or three of them
Spares.
which are all pre-Cisco.
It's 54G, right?
WRT 54G, and in the tiniest font you've ever seen in your life, with a microscope, read the hardware rev number off the bottom.
Anything below what, 4-ish?
Yeah, below.
You gotta be-
Three or earlier.
You have to be really, really, really careful if you're gonna put DD Ward or Open Ward on there.
No, I'm not gonna
You
do
get
that.
the
No,
wrong
one I
one,
got's got
and you'll
DDR,
brick the
and
thing.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
I've unbricked them before, but not an easy job.
That's something that, is it Bill Farrow is like an expert on that. Bill Farrow, he's he's active with the Linux users group.
TriEmbed.
And he's given some talks on how you,
Unreal.
well, it includes unbricking is kind of an advanced topic, but he's done workshops.
How to
They had-
not need the unbrick.
They had one up at Splat Space, where people just brought their routers in and they installed,
Okay.
I think it was mostly open WRT. And he was demonstrating how you can
How to put that on the
find
box.
the serial port and solder your FTDI into it and
Yeah.
start having a party.
So these devices are actually really good if you're doing like robotic stuff and you want like a local network to the robot and stuff. That's where I think I'm gonna eventually wind up reusing the one I have.
I have to believe that there are many in the same boat as Shane's, where if you just know where to
Why do
look,
you like
There's a
it so
dumpster
much?
full of them
Why
as
do
we
I like
speak
them?
somewhere.
Because, as Shane
Yeah.
said, they're as reliable as an anvil.
Yeah.
They just run.
That I used it at my in-laws. It was the only modem. It's like the third one I'd put, a router, this third one I'd put there that would stay up between visits at Christmas or then Easter, then over the 4th of July. Where mine, I was using the newer fancy, the different D-Link versions. I can't tell you how many D-Links I went through that would stay up. But then eventually, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, something would happen and something in the house would drop off the internet. And then I traced it back to, it was time to power cycle the router. The old units, that one, I never had to power cycle. It was nothing fancy, no fancy port mapping set up for it, but it just worked.
And it ran at 1 megabit, and we liked it.
They've got a 3 megabit line, and I am amazed at the Netflix performance that you can get with a 3 megabit line.
I use it every day. Well, not quite. Quick note, there's a comic strip on the internet called XKCD, and the guy's got a really great strip. It might be the current one right now, if not, it's like the day before. And basically, the caption is, why none of my stuff works, or why all of my stuff is broken. And on the left side, 10 hours spent figuring out why my server is running out of swap space. And on the right side is a photo. The server is plugged through a 24-hour timer that turns the power off for a minute every 24 hours.
I have done that to try to get a
It
router to
took
work.
5 minutes, right?
Oh.
And yeah, and I'm right where that's exact. I'm setting up this Odroid as a house server. It's doing DNS caching. It's doing shared files and all this stuff. And I've been fretting, well, how reliable is it really going to be? And I read this strip, I'm like, hey, no sweat. I'll just
Thinking
click
about
the
making a
power
cluster.
at 3 o'clock every morning.
It doesn't matter, as long as I get 27 hours of prime
But
time.
before I bought my Airport Express, that was the last ditch effort to get the D-Link DIR 655 to work. Was
Right.
resetting it at 3 a.m. every day.
And the other aspect of this is that this is replacing a server that dissipated over 100 watts. And this Odroid with a 2 terabyte disk drive, USB disk drive, running the disk drive as hard as it can go, and running the Odroid, all 4 cores, as hard as they will go, it dissipates 5 watts.
So is it the USB, is it a version 3 or 2?
No, it's only version 2.
Oh, version 2.
But compared to the speed of my LAN, it's plenty fast.
It's light speed.
I mean, my LAN only runs at 100 megabits.
Yeah, I'm starting to bump everything up to a gigabit on my line.
Glenn, I backed the 2G, but
With
I-
jumbo packets.
I got bit the same way. I was trying to decide 2G or 3G, and by the time I decided 2G, all the starter 2Gs were gone. Electron.
Electron? Is it electron or photon?
Fundamental.
Electron.
Electron's the cell one, cellular.
Oh,
Yeah, Photon, I think, is the one that's a little
Wi-Fi.
bit,
It's
the
the
Wi-Fi.
Under the
V2
core.
of the, yeah,
Spark core.
the Spark Core, yeah.
Pete, the system that you're gonna be setting up, this is your, to replace your NAS, is that what it is? Some kind of a new
It's
thing?
NAS and, I mean, it's very crude. I don't.
crude now. You're not doing grade 5 on your.
Well, okay. I'm not trusting that disk drive, so I have a mirror on another machine. And so there's kind of a hierarchy. And then I've got the DVDs that I hide under my bed.
Marked in case of fire.
No, those are in the fireproof box.
See, I've got a Western Digital My Book at the museum. That we're using just to store files that people can get to. And I thought about hooking up a Raspberry Pi to make a file server with it.
It won't be fast.
Raspberry Pi
Unless you get
2.
the newer one, the 2, yeah.
I have a cubby board, which is similar to Raspberry Pi, but it has a SATA drive that you can use and connect it, and you can connect it up to 2 to 3 terabytes.
What was the name of it?
Cubby, C-U-B-I-E, Cubby Truck, Cubby Truck, or
But
cubbyboard.org.
if I'm gonna use the Pi and the drive simply to store stuff, not for constant access to, why do I care how fast it is?
Because the backup speed will be
Backup
slow.
speed, yeah.
I don't care. I mean,
Just
I'm
start
not,
your backup tonight and it finishes a week
Sometime.
from Tuesday.
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm not backing up a terabyte.
It can still, I had this machine, I have a old Windows Home Server, defunct technology, but it runs daily backups, and when I upgraded my home from G to AC, like, it was night and day. It does incremental backups, and they used to take a couple hours, and they went to 10 minutes for the
Yes.
incremental backups.
So the whole thing with backups is if your backups aren't happening fast, things change before the backup's done. Too many things change before the backup's
Or
done.
they're too much of a pain in the butt,
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
okay, but if I have my laptop or I have the stuff at the museum, and at 5 o'clock, everybody's gone. Nobody does anything. We can back up then. I don't care, started at
What if
10
your
o'clock
backup
and
takes more than a
run
day?
until,
The thing to watch out for is if it's suboptimal to start, at some point you can cross a threshold of where you backed up today, but what you didn't realize is it never finished the backup from the day before, so they start backing up and no one comes up and tells you, yeah, basically your backups are crap for the last 3 months because we're getting backed up and not catching up with them. So
and that's why
It never
I
finishes.
don't want to use a Pi as a really small file. Remember, I've only got like 8 computers here. This isn't, 80 people.
Yeah, but
We're
that could
not
be a
talking about
significant amount of
terabytes
data.
of
Yeah.
information.
But they're-
Especially if you're not compressing the data or anything else along the way. It's gonna take a while. Now, if you use a newer Pi, the 2, you're not gonna have as much problem with speed.
I've got a couple of Bs that
I think you're trying to make a Pi do something that something else would do better. There's NAS devices that you can get for.
I mean, the NAS works. I was just gonna do it for the fun of it.
Yeah, but NASs are not really good for backups because the NAS isn't backed up.
if it's a second backup, I mean, as long as there's
Oh.
2 copies of the data.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
and I should
complete
I should point out, a plain Raspberry Pi B stinks running motion, okay? The performance is.
How many frames per second is that?
2 at
Oh.
480 by,
640 by
640 by 480, 2 frames a second.
It's getting better than
Beats the
that
hell out of
Um,
it. Yeah,
for a
well,
while. And
I don't know
then-
what
and
the,
then
I don't know
then
what
it
the
went
upper
to-
limit is, but all I know is that
The first time we went on vacation, we were pretty good. I was getting 5 or 6 frames per second. And the second time we went on vacation, it wouldn't run. I couldn't even get one image to come up. And I never did track down what.
it was,
So you're
you were
saying the
running out of
performance
swap space.
decreased?
Sorry.
Yes.
I
My
was gonna
major
suggesting
argument
that
with the
you
Pi
were
is
running
that
out of
there's
swap
no way to
space.
get, there's no way to get off of that SD card.
What do you mean you can't get off the SD card?
Well, you
I can
have to
show you how to
boot.
boot, well, you have to boot off the SD card,
Right.
but you can swap roots right from the get-go. So
Mhm.
the only thing, you only need about, what, 20 or 30 megabytes on the SD card. Or maybe it's 50 or something. Less than any SD card you could
So,
buy.
but what was the other one that you were talking about? I keep forgetting the name of that one.
Odroid
The
C1.
Odroid. Now that has the eMMC that you can put in there,
Yes.
which has, although it's not, doesn't have as good lifetime as a hard drive, it's a hell of a lot better than an SD card.
It's twice as fast as the.
It's also faster than an SD card.
It's four times as fast as a Class 10 SD card.
But also, SD lifetime only matters if you're writing to it. If you're booting off it, you're not writing to it. The life cycle doesn't matter as much.
Well,
There's a limited number of writes, but you can boot without doing any writes. at
yeah,
all.
but you're right. The number of writes is probably greatly decreased, but I bet you're still writing.
No, not to that /boot
You
partition.
can get it down to zero.
No, not to the boot partition, you're right. You're not writing to that.
And you
But
boot
when you boot up
immediately.
Linux, there's all sorts of stuff that gets written to var and
No, you can make it where there's no writes at all, we're trying to say. You boot from there, you create a RAM file system or some other file system, rotate to that and everything, all bar, all temp, everything goes to something else other than USB. Because I've actually booted off write-protected devices that I don't write to intentionally for things to go in the field. And I guarantee nothing's written to those things and it works. You can boot off of that and you switch to some other device for what you're writing on. That way, when you power cycle, you guarantee you have the,
Now I'm good.
you know, good, come back to it again. You modify what's on, you boot from it all. It's possible to do that on Linux.
Okay.
Yeah, now with Raspberry Pi, if you edit the command line.txt file and just literally,
That's in-
root equals, currently it's like root equals whatever block.
Yeah, so
MMC
you
block,
just
blah,
change
blah, blah, blah.
you just change the device and write the
Mhm.
roots on.
Yeah,
And then you better make damn
But
sure that device is available.
that's the killer, that's the killer. You can't do UUID with it. And so if you rearrange your hardware or turn something off and so on, it'll come up as SDA instead of SDB.
Yeah.
Or something else will be SDB. And, basically I got trained into configuring things in a very uniform way and paying attention to what I was doing with the USB, because otherwise.
One of the
you
problems
can't
with USB is that you never know what device it's gonna get when you plug something in.
With the Raspberry Pi, okay, I might be superstitious here, but I believe, well, no, I don't wanna say it's deterministic. That's going too far. But the first year or so I messed with Raspberry Pi, I mean, right from the first month I used it, I got the heck off of the SD card, because I was laboring under the delusion that I was gonna wear the SD card out real fast. Rod disabused us of that, but I was still in the habit of switching roots. So I went off of thumb drives, USB hard
But
drives.
thumb drive's not gonna be any good.
No, the thumb drive isn't gonna be any better, except that you can go down to Kmart and, Target and buy one for $6. It's like they're yesterday's news, so they're cheap, ridiculously cheap.
But you're saying though, you've learned from Rod that you don't have to worry about the SD card, really.
It depends on the SD card. You gotta get it.
Depends on what you're doing, but
Right.
like Rod said, I mean, there's a lot of smarts in those things that levels out and plays games with the rights, so
Just
they
always
last.
write the same location over and over again. It's smart to know how to take the location, move it around to cross on the card. So it's just wear leveling. So you're looking at the number of failures per location across the large SD, right? So I play fast and loose. I do my development actually on my SD card directly, period. every few months I pull it out and back it up, and I'm done. That is my device. I've been running the same SD card for development now for a year and a half, 2 years now. And I do all my compiles, all my runs there, bars there, on a swap, bars there, and I don't have any problems with the same SD card.
I've used it too, but I've heard about it.
So, what are you guys doing with swap on a Raspberry Pi? You're just not generating a swap at all?
Disable swap. I don't turn a swap on related devices.
Which means if you blow out memory, your machine dies.
I keep it straightened out to that size, what I'm doing.
If you take a lot of the smarts and SD cards, or actually to figure out, a lot of them are manufactured with bad sectors. So if you take two SD cards that are same, SanDisk or whatever, same size, if you look at the actual bytes on the bytes free, so it's formatted, they're almost never the same because they have some amount of bad.
Well, same thing with hard drives.
Well, they often, I guess, I notice it with SD cards because I image one and I'll try to restore the image to some random card and it's, so it always ends up, I image the biggest card and try to put it on the one that's, 100K smaller and it won't,
As long as you don't have everything right at the end, what happens is DD will just, it'll put on whatever it can put on, and if it runs off the end, it runs off the end.
Yeah.
It's just gonna make it.
If you're using,
I should have mentioned this earlier, but if anybody does not want to be on YouTube, raise your hand. And I'll write down your name.
Your photos our face and scramble our voices.
Your voice is gonna be on YouTube, but if you don't like your.
I'm on the witness protection plan, I probably would.
Is your name Walter or Wayne?
Is the only reason you don't get the pre-formatted SD cards from Newark when you get a Pi?
They cost more.
Right, that's the only reason.
Yeah, it's so easy to put an image on there, why do it?
Trivial to make. If you're running a Linux system, or if you have another Raspberry, well, no, I mean,
Even
You
from
can
a
do
flashing
it.
back to the last Raspberry Pi meeting.
well, no, I'm saying that.
You can even do it on Windows, that's programs that do it.
I don't do anything on
Raspberry Pi,
Windows.
but it's kind of like standing
But I
I
don't
on
have
don't use Windows.
the floor that's being swapped out. But it's real easy to make DD.
I mean, when I buy them for the kids, we get the whole shebang. They get the card, and I have a couple of extra ones that I keep, and I say, I have more important things to do.
I think that's totally valid.
Is it,
I'll-
by the noob ones where you have to
Yeah,
decide
they're all
which,
noobs, yeah.
decide which distro you're gonna?
Yeah, and the kids, I have them all default to Wheezy, but I let them know. Now, I'm gonna do one with ARM.
If you burn your own, you don't have to go through all that configuring stuff. You
Yeah.
can get how you like it.
Except part of what I want the kids to see is you muck this thing up, boot it back up again, and what does it say? Yeah, I forget what the command is. You hold the escape button down and bam, it starts all over again. That you can't, you lose that Python program you spent 3 days working on, but
But you can download that Raspbian.
oh, I've got the noobs, and I made one. I said, why do I want to do that?
so you're saying there's value added to having a
Yes, you are exactly right. It's
Well-
value added, and I cherish, or I believe in the value added. I don't want to spend the time doing it. If all I'm doing is a straight Wheezy, why do I want to have to worry about
Well,
it?
because, in most companies, when they install operating systems on machines, what they do is, and we're basically saying this is what you can also do on the Pi, what they do is, they will, like, if they're setting up like an OS X machine, a Mac, so they will create an entire Mac and then they will clone off that entire disk and they'll just have a bunch of disks, and they'll just pop that same version on every one of the disks. Take those disks, stick them in the Mac, and the Mac is running.
And it's identical.
Once
it's
the kids go
identical.
through the installation stuff, do they have to do sudo apt-get install? And
Absolutely. I plug them into the network and
You
say,
see,
okay.
If
you
you're
need to
not
put GB
wasting
on
time
it
in
now.
one place and not in another.
And I get them to learn how to do sudo apt-get, how to do
Well,
sudo apt-get.
there is some
update.
advantage for them, for the kids to learn that.
That's right.
I agree.
You could also make burning the image onto a raw card as part of the, you know, a lesson. Here, start with the blank SD
So,
card.
so we've spent the last hour getting the Raspberry Pi running, okay? If you wanna avoid that, then we're just gonna
Or,
clone this.
periodically, this is how you back up your card, and if you blow your card, get another card, and take your backup and put it on there, and whatever you backed up on it the last time is still there, all your software.
Having to do the backup, that's probably a good idea. I need to add this to my.
So, but the backup process is exactly the same thing you do when you want to load the card every time.
Yeah.
It's the exact same process.
I mean, I have a backup because I've got some stuff that I really tweaked and I don't want to lose it, but.
I usually DD it right to my NAS. And I put a date
The
in the
Raspberry
name.
Pi organization revises the stuff that goes on that Raspbian install thing too. Like, I got my Raspberry Pi with the group buy that Scott Hall put together and didn't commit to any one of the operating system versions because I was freaked out because I wanted to make sure that I had a backup of the thing. And then I realized, I decided that I was going to go ahead and do it and installed, I believe it was the Debian.
But you can get the latest version anytime you want anyway, so.
Okay, but I didn't know. And I didn't know that I didn't know. So I didn't even know that I needed to ask. So I installed it, and then I discovered everybody was talking about how you can play Minecraft on the Raspberry Pi. Well, I've never played Minecraft. So I went to find it, and it wasn't there. And then I went to the Raspberry Pi Institute homepage and discovered that there's a new version of it. So
It has the Minecraft on it.
So I downloaded the new one and went through the whole process again, and now I know a whole lot more than I did.
Yeah, I do not tell the kids about Minecraft until the last day.
That might be smart.
Yeah.
That power, I got, my son actually follows instructions, he was untarring and stuff, you know, the motivation of Minecraft.
This design,
Glad I don't have an 8-year-old boy.
I blame my daughter for having to go to Black Friday sale. It's her requirements. I go to those. One thing I always look for is good deals on SD, micro SD cards. I walk out with, typically a handful of those, just 8 to 10 of them I walk out with every year. And buy them cheaply. I bought 33 gig last year, it's under $10, 33 gig SD cards. Micro SD and SD card combined things under $10, 33 gig. I'd rather $10 than you can't, that's fairly cheap. And I go sit on the shelf when I need one, I grab another one, so. You start out looking at 40 gig, 8 gig, now I'm up 32 gig, small as I can buy. As small as I can walk out the door with, I don't need much. And now 32 gig, that's small.
What do you use them for?
For the Raspberry Pi, yeah,
Oh, you're putting a 32 gig in a pod?
Yeah. It's usually you can buy.
Oh, 32 gig SD card.
Why do you
I think I got
use
a
that
64
much?
in this.
I don't, I'm looking for whatever I can find, I look for cheap. So you basically find a lot of sales, or Black Friday sales like it, you know, different stores for whatever, I look for whatever I can find a good deal on.
Okay.
And this year I started with 40 gigs, and I went to 32 gigs, that's when I went 32 gigs, I'll have a handful of them, it's not even wipe the shelf, whatever they have.
32, if you do Windows, you know, it's that magic where they're technically, you know, above that, they're supposed to be X-Pack formatted, so this is causing a lot of headaches.
I mean, actually,
You don't use SD cards in place of a thumb drive, do you?
It will come, turn high in 36 36.
I've got a
millimeters.
cool little
Not milliseconds, microseconds.
USB adapter that takes a small micro SD card, and I do use mine occasionally as a thumb drive.
Yeah, so,
Why
Yeah,
only
I've done
occasionally?
That's the response time.
Because I have Google Drive and all various other storage devices, and it's just for stuff that I really absolutely want to have to make sure that I have in my bag and can get access to.
What changed?
Are there things better than using thumb drives?
For what?
Add the capacitor.
I mean,
For what? Yeah.
Yeah.
How about an SSD drive? Those things are really cool.
Oh, no, I'm saying.
Freaking expensive as hell, but-
I'm going to a customer tomorrow, I'm gonna do some work, I'm gonna back up some files. And I usually take my thumb drive and back them up so I can go look at them at home. Is there something that's maybe better than using a thumb drive just to move stuff back and forth with?
if it's just you, maybe not. I've discovered
Yeah, it's just me.
recently, I've recently discovered Google Drive, and with Google Drive, I can have 5 different people working on editing the very same document all at the same time. Literally watching each other make changes to the text, which, is either good or terrifying depending on, what you're looking at. If you're
I do
looking
that all the
at
time,
6
actually.
kids, working on making a presentation that's due at the end of class, and they're all working together and they're all equally tied in, then it's probably really a great thing.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with pie, it's just me separately, and I just.
I mean, I keep my own personal spreadsheets on Google Drive. So any place and every place I go, bang, I get all my own
Now,
financial
Google Drive is the same as
data.
Box.com, right?
Dropbox, Boxnet, yeah, they're all,
Because I already have Box.
yeah.
Okay, so that's the same thing.
Well,
Ish.
it works a little, same-ish, yeah.
Ish, yeah.
I mean, so is AWS for that matter.
The nice thing about the Google Drive
on
and
web
Google Docs and Google Sheets
Oh, okay, yeah.
I've been working with Wake Robotics, and so they do outreach things, and they want to know, are you coming to this thing on Thursday? Well, everybody has access to this thing. There's one owner of the spreadsheet. Everybody can edit the spreadsheet. Changes to the spreadsheet, are marked as Brian made this change, Glenn made this change, Pete made this change, and so everybody can see what's happening real time. And so when you're looking at this spreadsheet back at wherever the event
It
is
is
going to
really
be,
mind-boggling what Google has built into their systems.
yeah. So now it's like a central repository for people, but you can tell what people have changed. So
Yeah,
again,
there's a change record of everything.
Exactly, there's a change record, so it can be good, it can be, terrifying, Somebody could go in and delete everything that's in there. The
But
good
if
news
nobody
is,
else has access to this stuff, it's just
it's,
me.
if you don't share it, then nobody else has
Thumb
access
drive
to it.
is.
Yeah. So like all my own personal financial stuff, I don't share it with anybody.
But
You can trust it.
the nice
My
thing
wife
about Google
can't
Drive
even
is,